let's listen to one of African biggest and most celebrated woman who is praising what is happening in Burkina Faso. In fact, most of African leaders, they are not into what is happening in Burkina Faso. So they are not supporting what is happening in Burkina Faso. But we have this one greatest African woman who is saying that, look, even though people are talking evil about Traoré, for me, I support what Traoré is doing. Let's have a look at this.
But we can also see some light in the continent. Maybe, should I be controversial? Yes. Okay. I'll be controversial. You know, I've been to Burkina twice recently. Why? Because I can see a revolution there, a progressive revolution. Yes, some people ask me, how do you go there? There was a coup there. How do you visit a country where there was a coup? I said, on the day of the coup, I was not there. I was here. That young man removed another soldier, didn't kill anyone. But I went there because I can see there is a revolution. They are building that country. They are doing what Sankara had pronounced and was wanting to do before he was assassinated.
And you see, most of these developments that are happening in Burkina Faso, for example, the infrastructure development in Burkina Faso, the fundings that are happening within Burkina Faso, all of the funds that are used to fund these projects, they are not borrowed money, as most of African governments do. So a lot of this money is coming from what we call the Faso Mebo Initiative. Now, if you don't know what Faso Mebo Initiative is, this one is just like a public kitty, a government kitty, where everyone within Burkina Faso, actually, even if you are outside Burkina Faso, you can contribute to this kitty. Okay? So the money that is going to this kitty is used to develop and fund these projects within Burkina Faso. So that is amazing, to be honest. Let's continue watching this.
So you can see they've taken charge of their resources. They know how much gold now that they are mining they didn't know before. They are building their own roads. He's asked his engineers and giving them equipment. They are building the roads instead of waiting for companies from outside that are going to charge a lot of money. So he has given peasants equipment to farm so that they are self-sufficient in terms of food and so on. So, yes, he wasn't elected, but he's doing what elected people should be doing. Mm. That's my view. You can disagree with it. You can disagree with it, but that's my view. And our continent has enough resources to build the Africa we want. But we must take charge of them. How many countries in our continent know exactly how many tons of gold or whatever is lifted every day? How many? Even governments. They get told by the people who are lifting. How do we know when you say they've lifted 3, how do we know they didn't lift 5?
Look, even though what is happening in Burkina Faso is not actually appreciated with many African leaders, to the extent that the president of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré, is never given a right to audience when it comes to African Union meetings. In fact, he has never attended the African Union meeting. The main reason as to why he has never attended the African Union meeting is because they claim, the African Union, they claim that he was not democratically elected into office. And according to the African Union Constitution, for you to attend the African Union meetings, for you to be given a right to audience, you must be elected democratically into office. Okay? So that is why President Traoré is never given a right to audience when it comes to African Union. But permit me to say this. Even though previously he was never given a right to audience, I loved it when I saw the president of African Union, that is the president of Burundi, visiting President Traoré's country. Even though he is never given a right to audience in African Union, but the president of African Union paid a visit earlier this year to President Traoré's countries, that is Burkina Faso. That one is an indication that indeed African Union is seeing that good things are happening within Burkina Faso. Okay? So they are trying to learn what are they doing right that we as African Union are not getting it right. The countries in the Sahel region, they are collaborating massively to the extent they are attracting attention of the African Union, even though the three countries, actually all of them, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they are not recognized. The leaders of those countries are not recognized by the African Union. So let's continue listening.
We must take charge and ensure that we know what is happening, we know what's happening about our resources, and we must use our land. 60% of available arable land globally is on this continent. But this continent is importing food. We have water, we have sunshine, we have land, we have people. Why are we not growing our food? So we need leadership that's going to ensure we do the right things. We need to grow our food. This last year, probably we spent close to $100 billion importing food, dollars, as a continent, which we could have used to develop the continent. And growing our food would have also reduced the unemployment that is bothering us.
So talk about infrastructure project, construction of roads, okay? Construction of modern hospitals, constructions of schools, funding research and development. In fact, when we talk about funding research and development, recently the government of Burkina Faso took a good number of its scientists to Russia for them to go to Russia and learn what Russians are doing. And then after learning what Russians are doing, they come back to their own countries to employ what they've seen in Russia. So President Traoré is doing massive development. Okay? Actually, most of African leaders who are democratically elected into office, they are not doing what Traoré is doing. Yes, we agree that President Traoré was never elected democratically into office, but he is doing what democratic leaders ought to be doing. He is doing what it is of the benefit to his country. Okay? He has banned a lot of things within his country. Talk about banning the French media operation in Burkina Faso. Talk about, actually, I think it's two weeks ago, President Traoré just concluded the contract that he had with the French government. So France as a country is completely out of Burkina Faso as we are speaking now. So they are seeking African solutions to African problems. What we as Africans ought to be doing, what countries within Africa, the leaders of these countries in Africa ought to be doing. Okay? He is not democratically elected, yes, but he is doing what democratically elected leaders have to be doing in Africa. I normally give this joke that all democratically leaders in Africa, they ought to be going to Burkina Faso to benchmark what they are doing. Burkina Faso has created one of the amazing and favorable environment for African diasporas. So they are attracting Africans in diaspora to come back to Africa, come back to Burkina Faso, invest in Burkina Faso, and in return, we will give you the Burkina Faso citizenship. We have a good number of African, Pan-African leaders who attended a meeting in Burkina Faso, and they were given permanent residence in Burkina Faso. So they are doing their massive best to make sure that they are attracting the African-based minds to go and invest in Burkina Faso. So it is like an Africa for Africa initiative, okay? Yeah, so Africa for Africa initiative. So there are good things happening in Burkina Faso. That is why this passionate African woman is not listening to what the West is saying. Okay? She has been to Burkina Faso. She has seen how Burkina Faso is transforming, and she is congratulating President Traoré for what President Traoré is doing in Burkina Faso. Okay, so leave along these medias. So you see, with medias, they have a lot of propaganda. I think the best thing that one can do is to just pack and go to Burkina Faso and see what Burkina Faso can offer. Yeah, just pack and go and see what Burkina Faso can offer. Then you can judge it by yourself. Most of these medias are just into propaganda. Okay, and you know, when an African country is at least trying to raising its status, most people don't like it. More so our friends from the other world, they don't like when Africa is growing. So we as Africans, is incumbent of us to preach good news, okay? To show the world that Africa is indeed rising. To show the world that, look, even though people are looking down upon us, is incumbent of us that we have to make Africa great again, and Africa will be great. There are good things happening in Africa. Recently, the president of Ghana just announced that all Africans, if you have an African passport, you can travel to Ghana without a visa. Same to the president of Kenya announced that if you have an African passport, you can travel to Kenya without a visa. Go to the southern part of Africa, okay? Visit Zimbabwe and Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe and Botswana. They are doing massive things when it comes to immigration, when it comes to trade. So these barriers, the barriers that are hindering our development, we have to remove them. And at the end of the day, we have to see Africa progressing. So ladies and gentlemen, if it's your first time here, kindly like this video, share it to other Africans, then Africa will be great. Africa will be great. It will be great from the north, the south, west, and the east. And we will be respected when it comes to the arena of development in the world. See you next time.